Very catchy song. Found myself dancing.
You know what's interesting?
What?
The Lent and Ramadan
Yeah.
happen at the same time this year.
Just different lengths of time.
Just different lengths, but started about the same time,
yeah, about
right?
the same time.
So the Christians and the Muslims were fasting at the same time in the country. That song was done by a Christian and a Muslim.
Mm-hmm. And
so you see that
there's fusion.
There's fusion. But anyway, today we are talking about the end of Ramadan. And it marks the transition from a month of fasting, reflection, and self-discipline to a time of gratitude and community. It begins the Islamic month of Shawwal, which is the 10th month of the Islamic lunar calendar. Now, we had a conversation with another Muslim cleric yesterday on our sister program. And I was saying to him, look, the challenge is not the season. The challenge is sustaining the spiritual momentum that has started. He told me some very, very interesting things that I'm going to ask our guests this morning. Sheikh Faisal Zuglul is an Islamic scholar, a member of the governing council of Daru Dawa Arabic College. It is a chartered accountant and a chartered economist. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
I really don't know how you wear all those caps. Thank you for coming.
Well, he's wearing one now.
Yes. Well, Jubril Saba is also with us. He's Chief Imam, Muslim Workers Jamaat from Lagos Island. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning.
Let me begin with you, Sheikh. This might sound a little interesting.
Okay.
So forgive me. Okay. Why does it seem like during Ramadan, a good number of people are very well behaved? They don't do some things. If you can see that the person to my left is laughing. They don't do some things. But the moment the fasting time ends, it seems like we are back to, they just press reset. Why is that? Or is that just an assumption?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It is not an assumption. It is just, I would say it's just the human nature. Ramadan is just like taking a patient into the hospital for a period of time to get well and go back to normal activity. The same patient who possibly, when he's in the hospital, he stops taking alcohol, he stops taking to the doctor's directives. Immediately he leaves the hospital. There is every likelihood that he might still go back.
He will still go back to the hospital.
So
and possibly,
I think
God forbid,
it is just
die.
a normal human trait, which I think this is where we now have scholars. They need to keep emphasizing the need to keep that momentum till even after Ramadan. Because Ramadan is just a period where you are expected to go and mop up the energy for you to be able to use throughout the 11 months. It's not actually about that 1 month.
Exactly. Okay. Let me come to you, Imam. What this Muslim cleric also told me yesterday is that in the month of Ramadan,
yes,
the devil was chained.
Indeed.
And that after Ramadan, he's released. First of all, is that true? Secondly, if that is the case, why weren't we supposed to learn some skills of how to keep him at bay when he is eventually released again after the month, so that we can sustain the spiritual momentum for a bit longer?
Indeed. Thank you. And yes, Shaitan is chained in Ramadan. And one way to look at it is, like my dear brother, the Sheikh, said, those 30 days or 29 days are a period of spiritual reset. So everything in the environment that could pull you back is suppressed, including Shaitan. And you practice what is called voluntary restraint. That when you learn
how to hold yourself back from what is permissible for you from dawn till dusk, when you come out of it, you should be able to understand that you can also practice restraint in the face of what is not permissible for you. So it's a training, it's a habit-forming period of 30 days that is meant to help you slow down, step back from the everyday hustle and distractions, and see that you're actually more than your appetites. That perhaps you might attain a God consciousness that helps you to see that this is also possible outside of Ramadan. And that's the work of the scholars, to constantly remind us, outside of the Ramadan, of the lessons we learned then when we forsake food, water, intimacy, for the sake of Allah, that if you can forsake those, then you can forsake all the other vices and the baser impulses of being human.
I'll stick with you for a second. Shouldn't we remind ourselves, Imam Sabah, that whatever it is that we are holding ourselves back from is more to our benefit than to God's? That, holding yourself back, exercising the restraint that you talked about, is more to our advantage. There has hardly been a conversation we had on this program that we haven't been told that our health is a function of what we eat and what we drink and certain other lifestyle habits that we put up. Isn't there a way that we can perhaps let people know these things so that when they start it, and it didn't kill them in 1 month, it won't kill them the rest of their lives?
Yeah, correct. And that's why it has to be a constant refrain. Every Friday on the mimbar, when the Imam gives his lectures, when he gives his khutbah, at every exhortation, whenever we get a chance to gather, we must remind ourselves, because we're creatures that forget. When we have very little comfort, we forget about the difficulties that we've passed through and begin again to behave in ways that are not befitting of our creation, right? So it's a duty upon the scholars, the people who guide us, to constantly remind us. But then Ramadan is also a period of reflection, because it slows you down to think, to reflect on yourself, the impact you're having on society. Because outside of Ramadan, those deep lessons from gathering together as community to break fast, the charity, the generosity, the voluntary restraint, like we said, to keep away from what is permissible, all of that should strengthen you to carry you through the rest of the year until you come to the next Ramadan.
To receive more energy. Just one, Sheikh, how do you feel as a scholar when you have to repeat the same thing over and over again? How does it more, how do you, that's why I said I really don't envy you.
Okay.
How does it feel?
It feels pleasant, because that's actually the job.
To continue to remind people?
When we look at the Quran will say that فَذَكِّرْ فَإِنَّ الذِّكْرَ تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Allah will say that remind the believers. He didn't say remind those who have not. Those who have believed totally, they have succumbed to Allah, they understand. The Quran said remind them, because it's just, as much as we are believers, we're Muslims, we are human. And it is just a common trait in human to tend to forget, to tend to lose himself. So, but then, as long as you are, it is now the role of the scholars to constantly put them back on track, such that they do not derail.
Right. It's a good thing that, when we say there's a particular month, set aside to reflect, to deprive yourself of worldly pleasures and, pleasure meaning food and drink and things that will give you satisfaction. But, in reminding believers of, to reflect of the lessons learned during Ramadan and to keep that up for the other 11 months, I don't know, as it's practiced in Christianity, sometimes we just call for fasting, from time to time to be able to. Does that happen as part of this, reminders, during the year? Are there still time set aside for, maybe 1 or 2 days to also fast from worldly pleasures and also deprive? Does that happen in Islamic calendar?
It does happen, and that's a brilliant question. Actually, in the tradition of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu, in this month of Shawwal, we're encouraged to fast for 6 days, because the tradition of Shawwal is twofold. It's continuation of what you were doing in Ramadan, and it's also celebration. So it's not just about the celebration of the Eid, the Thanksgiving, the visiting each other. It is also 6 days in Shawwal following the fast in Ramadan. It is said and reported by the Prophet ﷺ that it equates to the reward of fasting for a full year. So again, it's a way of remaining connected to the things that you used to do in Ramadan, the Quran you recited, the restraint you showed, the standing for prayer in the night, even if it's for a shorter period, the charity. You're also encouraged, as part of the tradition of the Prophet, to fast on Mondays and Thursdays. So the religion is structured in a way that it keeps bringing you back to what helps you connect to what is real, to what helps you build discipline and not deprivation, because that restraint is meant to help build discipline. It's like a marathon runner. You go into a focused period of practice to be able to run an actual race on marathon day. And closer to the day of the marathon, maybe you run shorter races, less intense practices. It's the same with the religion.
Okay, still talking about this fasting, and sincerely, it's a good habit, healthy habit. It's just that, there are some people, once they're on medication, you really can't fast, like that. But still talking about the fasting, let me come to you, Sheikh. We understand that the Prophet taught that fasting is a shield against bad behavior. So, how can scholars like you better use the Friday khutbahs after Ramadan to instill that spiritual intolerance for public corruption and bribery and other bad behaviors?
Okay. Yes, because that is even actually the essence of this activity, Ramadan, and other things in Islam. So, but I think it's not even about not enough encouraging scholars, but it is their responsibility, and it is what they need to do from time to time, because there is a direct connection between Islam and nation building. If we are practicing Islam and the impact is not felt in the nation, then I think we are not doing enough. So if we go into Ramadan, that is, you are expected to come out accountability, because that's the period where you could go into the corner of your room, you could eat, but you do not. You could drink, but you do not. You understand? So it means the same thing is what you expected to take into your practical life as a public office holder, for instance. You are there in the corner of your office where nobody sees you. Then you should know that Allah is watching you, and you would not take even a penny of the public fund entrusted in your care.
So the way you are saying that you can go into the corner of your room, but you don't. Someone is feeling guilty right now. That's exactly what it is.
That's what I did.
Someone is feeling guilty right now that I went into the corner to take a sip of one thing or the other. Imam Jabbar, I'm sorry to make this comparison, but it is instructive. Saudi Arabia is a largely Islamic country. The UAE is a largely Islamic country. And we see what their leaders do for their people. And Mecca wouldn't be the place where everyone gathers if the country had been run down. So it is well organized. And our people go from all over the world, Nigerians inclusive, from wherever they are in the world, go to Mecca and a number of other places like that, and they see all these wonderful things that some might argue is because they imbibe some of these habits and attitudes of Islam and use it to build their nation. Is there a way we can foster that as well, beyond just the whole talk that we have? Is there a way to say, okay, so long as you belong in this religion, you are duty bound to do certain things, and we shouldn't be hearing some untoward things from you? Is there a way that that can be done?
Indeed, it's possible. It's down to how we connect the rigors of religious rituals to character reformation. So I'll give an example. The one who holds himself back from drinking water at 2 p.m. in the month of Ramadan, for the sake of Allah, should be able to restrain himself from helping himself to the public purse. We need to connect it in people's hearts to the point where they understand that your religion and the way you practice your religion is not separate from your work, whether as a politician or somebody in the private sector or an entrepreneur. It's an expression of your faith, right? So if with every permissible act that we perform, we begin to understand that so long as you do it for the sake of Allah and for the benefit of all of creation, it is an act of worship. It connects in people's minds, right?
And I think you should say that again.
If we begin to understand, right, that for every permissible act that you perform, so long as you do it purely for the sake of Allah, like we do fasting in Ramadan, and for the benefit of all of creation, it is an act of worship. That is the ultimate expression of your faith. That is the true definition of integrity and excellence. The teacher who teaches children excellently, right, patiently, is worshiping Allah. The engineer who builds a road that is not destroyed after the first rains is worshiping Allah. The procurement person, the budget people who are not padding budgets, who are not circumventing procurement processes, purely for the sake of Allah, that I know He's watching me, and I know He would ask me about this, is worshiping Allah. The public leader who has a trust and a manner and understands that in serving people, he will be called to question, to account for his service, is worshiping Allah. And this is what will reform behavior, that constant reminder and that constant refrain in their minds. There is a very short story I would like to share. Umar ibn Khattab, because he took us to the Middle East, the second caliph of Islam, radiallahu anhu, he, I think, is the gold standard for governance in public office. He was the caliph of Islam, the leader of the Muslims, sitting in Medina. It was reported that he was so concerned about his position as a leader that he would say that he worries that if a mule, a donkey, stumbled on the road in Iraq, which is thousands of miles away, Allah will hold him to account for not paving that road. That was the level to which the consciousness of Allah was alive in the hearts of those leaders then. And we can reawaken it in ours by connecting their work, their amal, what they do on a day-to-day basis, to worship.
I'd like you to expatiate a little further on that. Thank you so much, Imam Sabah, for saying that. I'd like you to expatiate a little further on Sheikh Zugo, because we understand that the love of one's homeland has a way of intersecting with the universal goals of Ramadan. Help us see it from a theological perspective and perhaps, ape some of the things that he has said.
I think it is indeed, it is very, very important. Not only important, I will continue to emphasize responsibility. When, in fact, it amazes me when today we come into a country like Nigeria and we still find the depth of poverty. In fact, and Islam exists there. It shouldn't. How do I mean? Islam, in the Quran, says that anywhere you have Muslims, there must not be poverty. So if you are in a country, in a place where...
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I am sorry.
Okay.
You said that the Quran says anywhere a Muslim exists,
Yeah.
there must not be poverty.
Yes.
So when you see northern Nigeria, you heard the first conversation we were having with our guests. They were talking about this whole insurgency being a function of poverty. And we know that, the north is largely Muslim. What does that suggest?
The Quran says that when you pull up the zakat, it is to take the poor out of poverty. That is a big terms of reference for our leaders. Now, if that happens in the north or in some parts of the country, it just tells us a simple thing. The leaders are not doing what they're expected to do. But I will always say that I think it's high time we start looking at other areas that can support the government. And I think we come back into the mosque, we go into the church. If we are still trying to cope with the epidemic of poverty in Nigeria, and you see Christians paying tithe, and you see the church building schools, hospitals that even the worshippers in those churches cannot attend, then I think we know where to turn into. If we have the Muslim community organizations building schools that an average member cannot attend, because it is now we now come to how it should be. It's a simple thing. Mop up the zakat, collect the zakat from people, from Muslims who can pay, and use it to alleviate, in fact, to eradicate poverty for the poor ones. We can just, so if we still now have a situation where, most especially in the northern part of this country, where you will see that as much as you have so much rich Muslims, and we still have so much level of poverty, then it means we need to go back into the mosque. And it's a simple thing we should do. Where are the zakat? It's a simple thing. We bring them together, at least on a general note. Let's build schools. Let's build hospitals. Let's, strategically remove this, people from poverty. And I think if the mosque can do that, the church does that. If we add that to what the government will do, I think a lot will have been done.
Right. Yeah. I mean, be that as may. So, you play a very significant role in, education, because of the role you play as chief imam. How can, the mosque, which is, supposed to be a hub of, educating people, especially during the month of Ramadan, and I'm sure there are other programs that happen from time to time during the year. There people come around. There are lectures. I know lectures happen. It's a very popular thing that happens all the time. So how can we use that as, not just to talk, but to truly educate the people, such that they imbibe these things that he just spoke about? That is not just, to educate them enough to say, this is what needs to be done. Don't just, talk to people that they must do, imbibe this, imbibe that, be spiritual, deny yourself, love your neighbor as yourself. It's not only that, but to be able to educate them, this is what must be done. This is what the Quran preaches. This is what Islam is about. It's about community. It's about helping each other, such that we do not have such situation as the insecurity that we have, the killings and the attacks, or to look at your neighbors, I just don't like you, so I'm going to harm you, or something like that.
Indeed. No, thank you very much, okay. And when they said sunrise is really hard hitting, the questions are really tough questions. I think I kind of underestimated that, because this last line of questioning is actually an indictment on people like myself, And I've heard it said before that some people say they are glad that they studied Islam before they met Muslims.
Yeah.
And the fact that you have Muslims in a community and some of these societal ills still exist suggests that our practice of the deen falls below the standard. The mosque, for instance, is the beating heart of the community. In every community where you have a mosque, the sunnah, the way it was taught to us from the time of the Prophet, the mosque in Medina was where he received delegations. It was a court. It was where disputes were settled. It was a place of learning. It was where people who needed help came to and they found succor. And we have to return to that. It's not where we are. If I look at our own masjid at Obalende, that's not where we are. We need to create a space where adults can come to for education, not just about theology, financial literacy, civic duty, health awareness. That space has to be created for that. Conflict mediation within the community before it escalates. That should be the first place people should go to. If people within a community are saying, let's go to the elders of this mosque, let's go to the imam of this mosque to help us quell this issue, then the mosque is serving its duty. For the young people and interfaith, make it a platform where people can come to and learn about voter, your responsibilities as a voter, run health drives, run skill building programs. That's what the mosque is for. It's not just for ritual prayer. And it's an area where a lot of us fall short. Ramadan, the congregation and the number of people you see coming into the mosque daily in Ramadan, either at the break of fast time or for the nightly prayers, tells you that people are yearning for something. It's on us to create that opportunity to fully utilize that space to, educate our people and hopefully reform them.
Part two of that question is centers on the youth. I know that as at the young age, from very young, from 2-3 years old, the children are taught, the Quran. They're taught the language, Arabic, how to speak it, and all that. And the recitals are really truly inspiring sometimes when you hear them speak. But can we also teach the youth these things that you have spoken about right from a young age, to say this is the right way to go? That's because we are old now. You may think that but if we start letting them know, and I know that those things happen, but as you have said, maybe it could be expanded to really drive it down and say, no, this is how to go. This is what Islam teaches, and this is how the way you should go.
No, thanks, Joke. And again, it's about connection.
Yeah.
It's how do we connect the message to make it relevant for people across social strata, economic strata, and age. For the young person, the self-restraint, the discipline, the patience of Ramadan should help you understand that if you did not cheat on eating during the day in Ramadan, then you shouldn't cheat in your exams. And you shouldn't cheat very broadly in life generally. The patience, the endurance that you practiced should also help you power through a difficult semester in school.
Yeah.
Because the lesson there is that all hardship ends. You come to a point where there is ease, Part of what we should connect for the young people of this generation and other generations is also to understand that the discipline that saw you through Ramadan is what helps you to develop excellence in your profession. Yeah. Remaining, following a structure, sticking to it, and trusting that it all works out in the end. That you go through 29, 30 days of discipline, some restraint, and then there's joy on the day of Eid. Like delayed gratification, voluntary restraint, delayed gratification in an environment that promotes overconsumption and instant gratification. Once you pick those lessons and connect it to their everyday lives, it should come alive in their hearts.
Wow.
Well, Sheikh, your last words on this, particularly, again, to children, because we often say that children are the leaders of tomorrow, but we don't even teach them leadership. So how can they lead? So how do you think we can pass on the lessons we are talking about today to the children, particularly starting from the family?
I think it's just to continue first to continue to show them, because most of the time we emphasize just informing the children what to do and all that, and we fail to do the right thing. So the major thing, the first thing is just, number one, we need to start doing the right thing. By the time we start doing the right thing, I think consciously or unconsciously, the children would see that and follow that poster. However, in addition to that, I think we would now continue to engage in all those areas in schools, in the mosques, in the church. Let's, continue, and possibly even having, leadership centers that actually teach children about leadership. It's not just because most of the people we have today, I would say they are accidental leaders. So I think if we can start that system of actually building, nurturing children to be leaders, I think that will be a great impact.
Thank you so much for your time and for your thoughts. Sheikh Faisal Zuglu, Islamic scholar, member of Governing Council of Darul Dawa Arabic College, is also a chartered accountant and chartered economist. Again, I still don't know how you cope with those. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
As well as Jubril Saba, who is Chief Imam, Muslim Workers, Jamaat, Lagos Island. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us.
For your humble
Pleasure.
thoughts.